I understand the reference that he makes to Napoleon and how he was able to draw on 40,000 men, and however he still had to retreat as a result of guerrilla warfare. So I guess my question is it that the colonizers still do not factor guerrilla warfare as an impactful tool to bring about change for us, therefore they do not recognize it as a tool for change? Because I didn't quite understand that. And I hope I made sense in everything I was saying.
Okay, am I audible?
You are.
Thank you. My first thing is I just want to touch. Zania, you can assist with the second part of the guerrilla warfare, right? Because yeah, I don't wanna. I just wanna. I wanna give you the opportunity to the floor as well. I just want to touch on the religion aspect of things, and unfortunately, religion is also very intertwined into our politics, right? And even a comrade like Steve Biko was strongly involved in Christian networks, right? And there's also a way of how Christian networks and church networks feed into political structures in various communities across South Africa, right? And we even saw it with Easter now, how all the ANC comrades had to dress up and cover their heads when they went to see the one of the biggest churches in South Africa, right? I think I don't know if it was the ZCC or, but it was on the news and everything. It was all over social media, which again just shows how powerful religion is, the Christian faith is, right? And then we go into there's yeah, it's a painful construct. And then you would find on TikTok at the moment there's people that are saying injure the when people that are traditionally inclined to spirituality are people of the antichrist, right? So the, there's this constant violence amongst the natives, amongst the oppressed, whereby colonialism is it's still psychologically making us extremely sick and vulnerable, and dividing us amongst ourselves on religious lines, political lines, or alter. So really, and Wuda Maya is like one of Africa's biggest bloggers at the moment. And the other day he asked the question, and he asked like, what is the biggest enemy of Africa in the modern context? And then he basically says, religion. You know, someone the comments. If you go look at the comment section, because it's mostly Pan Africanists that follow Wudemaya, because he's promoting the idea of having a united Africa, right? And he's also doing PR for Burkina Faso at the moment. They gave him a passport, a Burkina Faso passport, right? So he's there and he's vlogging and but he just asked that he's one of our biggest influences, and he's not doing it for mainstream or commercial purposes, but he's actually doing it for a pan-Africanist cause. But even there he said, and yeah, because it's either a religion instills this liberal kind of humanism in us, and Fanon is fighting for a new humanism, right? And I guess he identifies the religion as a major factor that's creating this passive, this um liberal African, whereby we accept the negotiated settlement, right? Because yeah, people will tell you, no, Jesus will take you out of the struggle. Pray unto the Lord, you will be blessed. And then we have this prosperity gospel, whereby if one guy out of the community graduates, then it's black excellence, right? And I guess we can also be proud, and we after 500 1,000 years of being colonized and achieving nothing, um we celebrate the low hanging fruits with utmost diligence. And someone also even wrote about how, I think it's one of the researchers of, a parliamentarian researcher, they all about in one of these books how Africans, how we invest so much into funerals, and this idea of dignified funerals, but then it ends up more actually about how we have nothing in life, right? And we would rather just put so much opulence on a funeral, but in actual life we in a zone of non-being. But yeah, these are just some of the, I don't have answers. I have my own way of approaching life and living life, right? Which is my answer, because I can't always put things into theory, and I have to break away from Western foreign religion in that sense. Even though we created the Ethiopianist churches, the ZCC, because those are actually when even Mandela speaks about the breakaway of the Ethiopianist churches, and how we chose to form our own clergies, our own church managements, by breaking away from European controlled churches. And that's why we have big independent African churches, but it's still within uh, the colonial Bible, right? But then there's also narratives of Christianity being in Africa. Um, so it goes into a nitty gritties, and we don't have the platform right now. We can only um, lightly unpack it, because we don't want to, because religion is, it's a spirituality, African spirituality, and religion, it's a session on its own. It's a week long workshop on its own. But that's what I can engage upon it, right? I i i i incline to African spirituality and traditional ways of venerating the Most High, Creator of the earth, and also appeasing our ancestors, because they can't come and tell us that um we idolize our ancestors. But that's once again also just how they have there's no words in African languages that feed into their concepts of how they have described us. But yeah, that's all I can say. And you will get comrades that strongly believe in the church. You will get Pan-Africanists that strongly justify, why they are Wesleyan, or why they are Zionists, or whatever. Even within the ranks, comrades are at church, because they also use church for political power within politics. So it's a tough cookie. It's really a tough cookie, comrades. I just wanted to share. If comrades want to fill in, if Azania wants to fill in on the religious aspect, or just give us a sentence or two, so be it. But that's what I wanted to say on religion. And comrades can, Azania can maybe touch on the gorilla, and why Fanon says that gorilla struggle would be to the benefit or to the detriment of colonizer or the colonized. Thank you.
Oh, sure. I I think I was just trying to go through the book again, and especially on the part of your religion, and in fact how I understand it, right? And of course, I think from my understanding, and especially for us as colonized people, and our relationship with the missionaries, and how just the religion on its own was used. Because for Fanon, right, the church as we know it is in actual fact a it's a foreign concept, right? Which is it is the colonizers' space, in the sense that even how natives are invited into this space, or how natives come about to the church. It is always or constantly between the confines or in the confines of master-slave relations, right? And he actually makes a point and goes to the Bible, where he says that, and quotes the scripts that says that some are chosen and some are called. Yeah, but that's the script biblically. And you would know then how biblically the Bible gets to be used by the missionary, right? Even if you go to the book of Matthew in the biblical sense, you'd find that the Bible and how we are constantly told that we must obey our earthly masters. It is also founded within the missionaries and how they used the church. And of course, within our sense, how the church goes further to show equally how the church, or sometimes because he calls this thing, it's Manichaeism in a way, right? Which is a form of dehumanizing of the colonial subject, right? In the sense that it positions us into this position of being evils. And I think with the video that we watched at first, it was trying to show also how, with Fanon and the question or the concept of the church, when you look into the ethics that and the morals that come with the church are always morals that are founded on vilifying, the black person. He goes further to even shows how with it this dehumanization of the black body gets to be zulified in the sense that you are a monkey because you are black, right? So he tries to show how the church, with its morals, with its values, it in a way, or convincingly so, um, puts or creates these relations of the slave and the master, right? And of course, this we cannot take it or negate it anywhere else outside of his concept of decolonization. Because with this, he's trying to show us how the process of violence, as it is enacted on black bodies, it is violence that subjects black bodies. And of course, in relation once again to the question of the guerrilla war and so on, I think Fanon understands the complexities that come with violence. He also understands how sophisticated colonialism is. And I mean, if you go further on the book, you see how he speaks of the technology and all of those things. And if your imagination then is in the right line, you would definitely see how this sophistication that I referred to you is, right? In the sense that the assault, which is the subjective violence, which is it becomes immediately personal to the body, right? Or to the colonial subject. So insofar as the guerrilla warfare is concerned, Fanon speaks of its effects insofar as the psyche is concerned. Because remember, with one being dehumanized and all the apparatus of the state used to justify this humanization. And by apparatus, I'm also referring to the institutions that exist, that is the church, which was one of the apparatus that was used, to violate black bodies, right? So he definitely understands that there is limitations of this because of the sophistication of 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 settler colonialism. However, there is some psychological effects that it has on the colonized because, in a way, with this Hegelian self-consciousness, now the slave or the native starts to realize that they are not only animals, they're human beings. And this is something that will gradually psychologically happen with the native, so long as the native is engaged, right, in this guerrilla warfare, even though it is not a means to, it is not an end, but in a way, it becomes a means to an end, but also a way that assists the native to reclaim its positionality as a human being, because in a way, they've been put into a positionality of being human beings for the longest of time. And of course, this is as a result of slavery, right? Because when Fanon speaks of the mannequin of the colonial society, right? What he's trying to do, right? Because he says that the colonized are penned in by a colonial society, and the only place that they are free is in their dreams. He even speaks of how our dreams, on their own, just to show our bestiality and our animality because of the zone that we are put in. It speaks of how masculinized, our dreams are even. One dreams of jumping out of bed, which are rare things that happen to people who are human beings, that is your white counterparts. So with this process of violence, of being colonized, it has stripped and taken away the humanity of the colonized, which in this sense it would be me and you, or the African identity. And of course, again, well then, yeah, I think let me just pause there now. Yeah, let me just pause it there. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I hope it does in a way answer. But yeah, I hope it does answer in a way. Let me just pause it there for now.
Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
Comrades, yeah, thank you. Yeah, this is exactly why we are gathering here, right? As comrades of the grassroots, as independent leaders, thinkers, activists, practitioners, young people that want to learn. As not everyone uh, are dealing with society or having the same positionality. So I think if there's nothing else from the floor, uh, Comrade Azania, thank you for assisting us this week, and I trust you will be with us next week again. Do you? It's so the proposition is that we will continue with the reading, so that we can finish by the 20th of July. I will keep comrades up to date with the possible screenings of these two documentaries of Fanon that we wish to screen, and then we also wish to screen. There's a cool soundtrack to a coup d'etat, which is in context of Lumumba, as Lumumba is also turning 100 years in the second on the 2nd of July. Lumumba is actually turning 100 years. So we possibly, whether it's going to be at one of the universities or at Bertha House, or any other facility where or an NGO office or whatever, whoever will give us access to their resources. So that's that. If there's anything from the floor, if Kruskoi, if you want to say anything, if Tutu, you want to say anything to close up, because yeah, it's about 5:30, and I think yeah, we've done enough for this week. Azania, do you think the covering the next 30 pages will be suffice, and then we come back instead of playing catch up, or going back and starting over again or starting another book? Can we, seeing that we are only at the third session, I think we can still continue to do intentional reading, so we can have Wretched of the Earth done, and then we move on to other texts in the similar format. Because me, I'm in George at the moment. I don't know where comrades are, but we give thanks for technology, which allows us to share this space, and for comrades to share their ideas and their way of thinking of Fanon, and even for the inquiries from comrades that seek more clarity, as we are always on a quest for development and thinking. Yeah, let me close my mic, and please share with us so we can. Yeah, Tutu, I see you have one last question. So you can share with us, and then I will, after you, Kruskoi can unmute herself, or Azania can unmute herself. Thank you.
Okay, so my last question is just based off of another point and a parallel that I've made on my own, right, in regards to nonviolence in comparison to non-racialism in South Africa, right? I just wanted to ask a question if the way I've interpreted it, would the way that I've interpreted it be correct? If not, could every anybody who would like to expand on why, please expand, or if yes, please expand on why. So the correlation that I had made was in regards to nonviolence in comparison to non-racialism, and in how Fanon speaks about how when the natives put the knife to the neck of the colonizer, um, the middleman, the native intellectuals will then come in as the moderator or as the middleman to kind of try and diffuse the situation. However, then they further perpetuate their own desires in regards to what it is that they want out of the 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 journey to decolonization, right? So for me, the parallel that I made is that display that Fanon makes in the book kind of reminds me of South Africa in regards to how it is that we got to the concept of non-racialism, for example, and things like the Sunset Clause, and how it is that we have the Rainbow Nation today. When I interpret that, as it is as though, similar to how he displays it in the book, it's how in South Africa, the people who are on the ground, outside of the people within the ANC who were brought to the table to have the conversation, who we now know now as the political elites, didn't necessarily negotiate. This is my personal view. Didn't necessarily negotiate on behalf of all of us as the oppressed class. However, negotiated in regards to their own personal interests and how they see themselves today as the political elite. So that's just that's the parallel, the comparison that I drew. So I just wanted to know if anyone else saw it that way. If not, why? If yes, why? Yeah.
Just to answer you, 100% correct, right? But again, we would need to go back to him insofar as his position on the colonialist bourgeoisie, as well as the process of decolonization, right? So, on his conception, right, the colonialist bourgeoisie convinces, of course, the colonized intellectual that they must exact individualism. And that, of course, with exacting individualism, that would mean that there's wealth, there's power, and so on, which on its own divorces or takes the colonized intellectual from the collective identity. Because now, according to them, decolonization is just an individual thing, but not a collective thing, right? Because what Fanon does beautifully with the how he unpacks or conceptualizes decolonization in the first few pages on violence, it speaks of how there's this encounter, between these antagonistic forces, that is us and the white and the black, right? Which owes its singularity to the kind of reinfection secreted and nurtured by the colonial situation. That is our antagonism with whiteness, or therefore our relations with whiteness. They are found in basis, of course, or our contradiction with them. It is because of our position as colonized people, which is in his conception of it, decolonization, the last being the first and the first being the last. We were always the last, which this situation then gets to be informed by the colonial situation. Marrying this to the point you are making, especially on non-racialism, because in South Africa, the non-racialist agenda or the non-racialist framework is introduced by Robert Sobukwe. But Sobukwe, on his own, he takes this non-racialism, and of course, he's trying to expand on Fanon, because Fanon speaks of how this decolonization is not going to take place by just a magic wand, right? But it is going to be something that it is going to be noticed, because he argues that decolonization does not go unnoticed, right? He also speaks of how decolonization just fundamentally alters the state of being, right? That is, if you were a master, you are now going to be a slave. And if you were a slave, you are now going to be a master. But with that, to happen and that transformation to happen and for a non-racial society to take place, there needs to be that rupture, right? And that rupture is only through this dialectical confrontation that must take place between the colonized and the colonizer. Because without this confrontation, a new being cannot be created. We are constantly going to be in loggerheads, or we are constantly going to find ourselves at a position of being servants. You're making a beautiful point, especially concerning the bourgeoisie or the colonialist intellectual in the confines of South Africa. Because what happens mostly with the intellectual, especially in arguing for a non-racist society, they want to play it safe in that for a non-racial society to be realized. Because for South Africa to become a fully independent and a democratic state in that, because our conception of democracy within the context of Africa, or even the conception of democracy from the West, it dictates one, that it is the rule of the majority, right? Number two, the socialist framework as well, which speaks to the relations of the worker to the land, right, says that one, and let me start with democracy first, that democracy, it is the rule of the majority. So within our context and in the context of Africa, the majority remains and is constantly Black people and within the confines of South Africa. Hence, in most instances, apartheid is referred to as the government of minority, because in hindsight, white people are nothing but immigrants who arrived in the shores of our continent, who came to disrupt, who came to take, and that is to steal in actual fact, not to only steal the land, but to also disrupt our ways of living as a people. So there's then this agent need that he speaks of, the need to thoroughly challenge, the colonial situation, which is for us then to challenge that colonial situation and for us to have a country that sees no color. There must first and fundamentally be this confrontation that is going to take place between the colonized and the colonized. When he makes the statement that, this thing is of effect in the sense that the first is the last and the last being the first, which in simple terms means therefore that the rightful heirs of the land must then be given the land in such a way will then be able to live in harmonious, non-racial, or even rainbow-with nation, whatever a rainbow-with nation looks like, because at its conceptualization, to be rainbow-with means to be non-racial, but whilst also equally at economic level, which is what he also speaks on when he says that, when it comes to our context, we need to also equally look at how we employ or use marks in that. Marx becomes insufficient when it comes to us because it negates one, the colonial position, that is the race question, right? Insofar as we are concerned. Hence, he makes the position that you are rich because you are white, you are white because you are rich. So the how then non-racialism has been conceptualized, firstly, by these bourgeoisie intellectuals. It is also a result of how the intellectual bourgeoisie has this relationship with the colonialist bourgeoisie, which is to maintain the status quo, right? And which the point that he makes also, I think he argues something along the lines of the notions of the intellectual, the colonized intellectual is going to realize that there is no such thing as being, or existing as an individual. However, they are going to realize the importance of these rural meetings, these assemblies, and so on, which speaks therefore then of the collective identity, and by collective identity, referring to the collective Black people that then seek to be liberated and need to be liberated. And just to respond to you, Ras Haynes, I do not think we should pause how we're reading the book. I think we should continue with reading the book, but it's just a matter of making it a point that every week we engage, like how we are doing today. This is a beautiful thing that we are doing, but just all of us to come prepared. And then if people have questions, we ask these questions, we deliberate, we go into the book, we also unpack the book and provide meanings to certain areas that are not clear. So I think to I was just trying to respond to your question on the colonized intellectual, linking it to non-racialism, and also what that means within our context of the Rainbow West country. Thank you.
Thank you, comrades. Very powerful. Um, yeah, and I think Subukwe also engages on the concept of a new humanity, right? Which is um what we actually have to grapple with. Like, what does Fanon? Because he doesn't tell us what a new humanism is. We actually have to get to the conclusive understanding of what a new humanism is. So yeah, thank you everyone for the questions and even for the reflections. I think we can call it a wrap for this week. So we need to now cover from page. I think we're gonna be it's the last few pages of um on violence, and then we're going to be moving into the other chapters of the Wretched of the Earth, which is the following chapters. So it's nine. So another 30 pages would be 120. We will, yeah. Let's just read up until let's say 130 uh page 130 of the book. It also varies depending on what PDF. Comrade Azania, it sounds like you have the book in a physical copy of the book. Unfortunately, not all of us has the physical copy. I think you have the one that was released a few, like, just after the four lists did their thing. It's the one with the picture of him on the front. It was all over at the bookshops, and I think I need to also get me a physical copy. I had one, but then I lost it. But right at the moment, so most comrades actually were reading it via the PDF. Hence, it's important for comrades to make notes, because when they're on their phone and in a online workshop, they can't all necessarily go back and reflect on the book itself. So that's why it's important. Hence, I'm asking comrades to read during the week, so when they come back to us next week, yeah, we at least have notes to reflect on, and yeah, that's basically, yeah. So the following chapter that we're going to deal with is grandeur and weaknesses of spontaneity. So I will ask the comrades in the group to come through. We were 3, 4, 5 here, and yeah, I think two, and even me myself, from your perspective, Azania, we gained a lot, and thank you for joining us. Like I said, the only reason why we were playing the lives the YouTube is because we lacked a voice that can sufficiently deal with it. And even you, Azania, you are dealing with it in a much better um dialectic than I would, as yeah, I'm a bit more blunt, crass, and I'm still dealing with generalizations, right? So thank you for your presence, comrades. I think we can therefore, where's my, where are you? Okay, yeah, sorry, glitch. I think we can therefore wrap it up. We can just say goodbye. Tutu, are you sorted? Is everyone sorted? We meet up next week. We'll read up until, yeah, we'll read another 40 pages into the book from where we are now. Thank you.